there's something you gotta understand about Rome.
Please.
See, as a republic, they were hell-bent on preventing any one man from ever gaining too much power. And so rather than having one leader, Rome had two, called consuls, who shared power. These consuls could also only serve for 1 year at a time before new consuls were elected. These measures to limit
It's really
the power
impressive, isn't it? I mean, of course, oversimplified discussion of the early magistrate and consuls in Rome, but obviously oversimplified channel. I mean, I can't use that against them, can I? But it is a fascinating thought if you think about it, how sort of ahead of their time they were when it comes to putting them in comparison with, for instance, Germanic tribes and Celtic tribes. The Greeks had also very particularly Athenians, because it's the ones that we have more records for, had also had a form of, in that case, pure democracy, and with Rome is a little different, but still, it's fascinating to think that they thought that way, right? Even with the terms, sounds so modern, and it's not the only thing, of course. Now, given Dia oversimplified, I'm going to tell you this: you did a very good job with the walls, but these columns, these white columns, we got to paint them a little bit, mate. We need to paint them. I actually didn't pay attention to statues. Did they paint the statues?
powers of the consuls were noble, but had an interesting side effect. The consuls knew they had just 1 year to try and gain as much glory and prestige as possible, something that was very important in Roman society. And the best way of gaining glory and prestige? Military victory, of course. The Roman political system.
Yeah, there is a very strong connection between the head of the military and also at the same time being political leaders. And at the end of the day, even when that starts to become a little bit less of a thing, generals or legati still had enormous political power. So there was always, you have to kind of imagine it as if today's president was also a veteran general. Look at it that way.
Basically ended up encouraging these consuls to go out and be as aggressive as your Italian grandmother when you don't eat all the spaghetti. And so the glory-seeking
Spaghetti.
consuls convinced the people to vote in favor of going to Messana. And in they went. Upon the arrival of the Romans, the Carthaginians in the city, amongst the confusion, were forced to leave. Now, in contrast to Roman aggression, the Carthaginian military had a slightly different philosophy. All right, kids, listen up. If you want to grow up to be Carthaginian military leaders, there's a few things you have to understand. If you fail to succeed on the battlefield, that's a crucifixion. Showing cowardice, that's a crucifixion. Hello, sir. What are you doing here? Aren't you meant to be in Messana? Yeah, but the Romans showed up. So you just left? Sure did. Oh, you better believe that's a crucifixion. The Roman consuls were awarded for victory, and therefore tended to be aggressive go-getters. By contrast, the Carthaginian generals were brutally punished for failure, and so they tended to be more cautious and restrained.
Right.
This dynamic is helpful for understanding some of the crazy things that happened during the Punic Wars. So, the Romans have crossed over to Messana, and now there was some red on the island. Hit that panic button. This turn of events was unacceptable to both Carthage and Syracuse, so the traditional enemies teamed up to kick the Romans off their
WTF? What the
island. They surrounded the city and said, "Hey, you jerks! This isn't your island! Come out of there at once!" "Okay, we're coming!" See, Phil, you just gotta speak with authority.
Troops.
That's what being an alpha male's all about. Hey, man. You brought your weapons and armor? No, I didn't mean... Oh, crap. Out the Roman legions came to engage the Carthaginians.
and they're all happy. I mean, you know, pitch battles where the Romans shine the most, so I mean, it does make sense.
And they sent them packing. With the Battle of Messana, whether intended or not, by going to help the Mamertines, the two sides had just slipped into an all-out war.
They must be doing some decent research to probably have some good advisors here. I appreciate that because oftentimes channels that do the little animations, what they do is they just read Wikipedia at you. Doesn't seem to be the case.
With the initial Roman victory, towns across Sicily, including Syracuse, began switching allegiance because being a winner is more fun. But the Carthaginians weren't about to just give up that easily. In 262 BC, they began building up their forces at Agrigentum. So the Romans, being aggressive go-getters...
Interesting classical Latin pronunciation there.
...aggressively go-got them. The Romans immediately laid siege, hoping to starve out the Carthaginian garrison. However, Because this was the first time Rome had been fighting outside the Italian peninsula, across the water, they struggled to supply their forces. And before long, the Romans were as starving as the Carthaginians they were besieging. They had to forage for food, leaving them open to ambush. And when Carthaginian reinforcements arrived, creating a double siege, things got really bad. Everybody starved each other for months until nobody could take it anymore, and they all finally came out for battle, which Rome won. Here's the report from the recent siege at Agrigentum, sir.